Hey folks, I'd like to show you some examples from section 3.1 in dealing with complex numbers. So take out your notes, go to section 3.1, and let's head down to number 26 first. When you take a look at this, remember that you always want to deal with the negatives first. That was what we said in class. The negative on the outside is just a tag along, so for now we're just going to leave that alone. But the negative on the inside, remember that the square root of a negative is I. So I'm going to take that square root of the negative and I'm going to turn it into an I. Remember that the negative on the outside was just a tag along, it stayed there. 95 has no perfect squares inside of it. It is just simply 5 times 19, so there is nothing that I can do to simplify the square root of 95, so I'm going to leave it alone. Jump over to number 32. For the moment, leave the I on the outside alone. We want to take care of our negatives on the inside first. So the square root of a negative is I, so let's take that square root of a negative and let's turn it into an I. The first I is from the original, the second I is my square root of my negative. Now I can simplify both the outside and the inside. The outside, I times I know is going to be I squared. And I know that the square root of 16 is a 4. Now we learned earlier in our class period that I squared is the same thing as negative 1. So let's make sure to turn that I squared into negative 1. And then negative 1 times 4 is a negative 4. Then if you'll go down to number 62, here I'm multiplying two complex numbers. All I have to do is FOIL here, first, outer, inner, lasts. So if I multiply the first, the outers, the inners, and the last, you'll take a look. Negative 25 is my first. The outers, negative 5i, the inners, negative 5i, and the last, negative I times positive I, is a negative I squared. Don't forget that I squared, this is the same thing as a negative 1. So I have a negative 1. I need to simplify that. So that's going to be a positive 1. Now I need to combine my like terms. I've already combined the like terms in the middle, the negative 5i and the negative 5i. And then let's go ahead and combine our real parts. So I have a negative 25 plus a 1, which is going to be a negative 24. Negative 24 minus 10i is my complex number. Now, for number 70, what I'd like to do on this one is I need to go ahead and rewrite that 4 minus 3i. Since there's two of them, let's go ahead and get rid of the square and just simply write two of them. And I'm going to FOIL the last two quantities, and then I'll deal with the negative 5i out front. So I have my negative 5i, didn't do anything with that. But I FOILed the last two, and I got 16 minus 12i plus 9i squared. Don't forget that plus 9i squared, this whole entire term, is going to turn into a negative 9. So let's simplify what's on the inside by combining our like terms. 16 minus 9 is where I got the 7. Negative 12i, negative 12i is where I got the negative 24i. Now I can go ahead and distribute the negative 5i. So that's going to give me a negative 35i plus a 120i squared. Don't forget, your whole entire plus 120i squared is going to turn into a negative 120. So continuing to clean up, let's make sure that our real part is first and our imaginary part is second, so that our final answer is negative 120 minus 35i. Now let's come down to division. I walked you through division in class, so let's take a look at number 96. First thing that I want to do is figure out what is the conjugate of the denominator. And for this, remember I'm using these how-to steps that I taught you in class. So what's the conjugate of the denominator? Well, the conjugate is going to be a negative 3i. So I'm going to multiply on top and on bottom by that conjugate, negative 3i over negative 3i. Remember, that's totally legal because that's just the number 1. Multiplying by the number 1 doesn't change anything. So now I want to multiply on top and I want to multiply on bottom. So when I multiply the tops, I get a 21i. When I multiply the bottoms, I get a negative 9i squared. Now don't forget, negative 9i squared is going to turn into a positive 9. So that just shows the work there, 21 divided by that original negative 9 times the negative 1, which becomes my positive 9 that I mentioned. That's going to become positive 21 over 9. Of course, we won't leave it like this. We need to reduce our fractions. And so that's going to turn into the fraction 7/3. Now, if you'd like a little bit more tutorial on dividing complex numbers, I've posted a link here from Khan Academy. This is not my video, but it's Khan Academy's video about dividing complex numbers, and it'll also walk you through step by step as well.